Just like to apologise to Ron Dennis, one of the greatest F1 team bosses of all time, for that appalling impression.
Sorry, sounds like Darren Hicks and Ron Dennis.
From Autosport.com and Autosport Magazine, I'm Kevin Turner, and this is the Autosport Podcast. Well, welcome to the third episode in our look back at the greatest World Championship Grand Prix in the 75 years of the Drivers' Championship, based on this book, as we've said, that fortunately I have the author with me to talk about the list, why we chose the 10 we did, and we've also got someone else who's going to grill us, or not, depending on whether we've made the right sort of choices. So first of all, before we get into the list, I'm going to introduce you first this time, Stuart Codling, who is an author, who I should have mentioned in previous episodes. You're an author yourself. Have you got any books on the go at the moment?
I have got 75. No, that was the one that came out last year. I've got the Formula One Champions Car by Car coming out next year, and also a new version of my Ferrari Formula One Car by Car book, which has got, the last one came out after 2020, so they've decided in the Victor Kiam style that they like the way it's sold. Can you do a new version, please? So it's going to have another 5 Ferraris in it.
Excellent stuff. And also joining me is the author of this book, Roger Smith. Welcome, Roger, back to the podcast. Have you got any more projects that you've got bubbling away that you're going to be dropping me a line about in the coming months?
I do.
Excellent.
Actually, I do. It's a book that talks about the America's journey in Formula One.
Good timing, yes.
And it's coming out, I think, in next February, which will be the third book that's been published in my name and your name in this particular one in this last 12 months. So I think that's me done. I think 3 and 12 months is enough.
Is it a mic drop moment? Until your publisher comes back and says, we want more.
No, I think it's too late though.
It sets the scene nicely for Colton Herta to make his switch from IndyCar to Formula 2 to see if he's then going to make it into F1. It is about time that America had a decent Grand Prix driver. I mean, the last regular proper American driver, would you say, was Eddie Cheever?
Yeah.
Hopefully not offending too many Scott Speed fans.
There haven't been many high achievers since then.
Whereas Eddie did score a couple of podiums, and he was around quite a long time, wasn't he?
Logan Sargent, nice guy, but not quick enough.
No, sadly not. Well, yes, we wish Colton Herta best of luck in Formula 2, but we're not talking about Formula 2 today, unless there are some... no, there aren't any Formula 2 era races in this particular list.
Nicely corrected.
So, yeah. So, the 100 greatest World Championship Grand Prix. We've broken it down into 10 chapters or 10 episodes, if you're listening to the podcast, as I hope you are. Otherwise, what are you doing? I suppose you could be reading the book and listening at the same time. Would that spoil it though? Don't know. No. Do you recommend it?
I do.
Get a copy of the book to listen to that. I'm looking forward to this one because I think that this is going to be a good... Some of the chapters, Roger, I think were quite difficult to define, weren't they? When we were trying to get the 10 subcategories to break these races into. But comebacks, everyone knows what that means, surely. Stuart, did you have when you pondered the list that we're about to go through, did that all make sense to you? Were there any ones that sort of went,
No, it did. I mean, there's one that we're going to come to where even one of the parties of the first part didn't seem to view it as much of a comeback. But for my money, all of these had exactly what we were looking for in a comeback. Drama, someone taken out of the game early on and having to really push to really overturn the odds. And I suppose there have been quite a lot of comebacks in Formula 1, so distilling it down to 10 must have been quite tricky. But we've had some comebacks in our other episodes with drama and...
Yeah, I think that's fair to say there's some overlap here. So if your favourite race or something you think should be in this list hasn't appeared yet, tune into some of the other episodes or get a copy of the book and see if your favourite is in there. We've got 100 races covered from, I think, a short list of 100... Well, not a short list, is it? 120? That's quite long. Right, anyway, let's get into comebacks then. And number 10 is the 1982 South African Grand Prix, which for my money is one of the great underrated drives in Formula 1 history. Somebody who should know better once said to me, well, can you name a memorable Alain Prost drive? At which point I pulled out a very long list. And this was one of the ones high up on it because, so it's Kyle Army, Renault Turbo territory. one day where they didn't blow up. Alain Prost comes back from a lap down.
The lap down.
To win the 1980 South African Grand Prix at Kyle Army. This one was quite late onto the list, I think, wasn't it?
I think you bought it late onto the list, actually.
Too many secrets.
So I think I'm going to...
Well, do you agree with it?
I'm going to throw to you. No, it's definitely a marvellous comeback in the sense that, as you say, he was a lap down, and the only thing that sort of is against it slightly, his teammate Arnoux and the other Renault that is, was in difficulty, and therefore it perhaps made it a little bit more
easier to catch him.
To catch him. But nevertheless, a lap down on your teammate, even if the teammate is slowing towards the end, is a very significant thing to achieve.
And I guess that's why it's sort of at 10, because they did have an advantage. You could go past other people relatively easy, but also a fearsome racetrack, Kyle Army Codders. I mean, we haven't got a Grand Prix in Africa at the moment. I guess Kyle Army is one of the candidates, but this is the old version that was really properly fast.
Because they reversed the direction, didn't they, when it came back onto the calendar in, I think, 1992 was the first race.
Yeah.
Andrea de Cesaris went out and drove the wrong way round, because that was how he'd done it the last time, and said, oh yeah, they've done it really nicely, but all the gravel traps are in the wrong place. You're driving the wrong way.
Can that be true? Is that I've got to know if that's verified?
I like to think, the fact that it might not be true doesn't stop us from repeating it, because it's a great story. But yeah, that was one. It was particularly enjoyable to go back and look at the video footage of that race, because you forget what a great circuit that was before they decided to build a housing estate on top of most of it. All that elevation change, which is now just someone's nice view from their balcony over a golf course or whatever.
And also a nice reminder, I think, that he's kind of got that reputation as the professor and calculating and all that sort of thing, which I think is true, but sometimes is used as a bit of a weapon against Alain Prost, that maybe he wasn't that fast. Well, he was fast, wasn't he? And this is a nice reminder of just new tyres on, go, just flat out. Well, number 9, there's a lot happening in this race. This is another one of those races that could have perhaps slotted in to a couple of other categories, because my main memory from the 2018 German Grand Prix is Sebastian Vettel throwing away the race lead and coming into the stadium.
Yes.
Were you there? Was that?
I wasn't there. I was there the following year for the other wet weather race that ended in total carnage.
Well, Roger, but it's actually here because Lewis Hamilton won from 14th on the grid.
Yes.
And every great driver should have one comeback drive or win from far back on the grid, and this, I suppose, this is his really.
Well, I think he had another one in Brazil.
Interlagos 2021. Yeah. Interlagos 2021 would be the other one.
This one, you talk about sort of Vettel going off. I mean, that is the memory. It's more that's stronger than Hamilton coming from P14 to win. Is how he threw it away at his own race.
Yeah,
and
blamed the car for punching the steering wheel. What wasn't the steering wheel of the car that went off the track? How was it?
And there's a lovely picture in the book behind where he's crashed at spectators. They are horror struck. There's people with their arms up like this or on their heads or whatever, and some lovely sort of gawping faces who just cannot believe what's happening in front of them. Because I mean, that was an easy win, and it was just blown away.
Well, I suppose it started to rain, hadn't it?
Yes,
and I think there was a point at that race where Hamilton was lapping a couple of seconds quicker than everyone else. And you think, oh, here we go. Because this was still, I think we're into peak Hamilton at this point, where he would just pull a rabbit out of a hat. We've mentioned rabbits a lot in this series, haven't we?
We are at Silverstone.
We had a scolded rabbit in the last episode, which I particularly enjoyed. And so I think he was probably putting the pressure on, but I think it was just a straightforward driving error from Vettel, wasn't it? Really, it almost typifies his championship challenge crumbling, doesn't it? That
was kind of the beginning of the end that year, wasn't it?
Yeah, but I think Bottas briefly challenged Hamilton and was then told none of that. Yeah. But to be honest, Hamilton had already earned his right, I think, by then from coming through the field and being so quick in the sort of slippery intermediate period where you're not quite sure what grip you've got, where he's excelled. Well, another wet race. Now this one, if we had could be high on the crazy races list. The 2011 Canadian Grand Prix. number 8. A lot of people think it's Jenson Button's greatest drive. I think even he has said that. Jenson, I disagree. I'm sorry. He hit too many things, including his teammate. He hit Fernando Alonso's Ferrari. Yep. He had about 4 pit stops. I mean, in terms of never giving up, and obviously switching on the tyres in tricky conditions. I mean, it was perfect Button weather territory, wasn't it? And it was an incredibly exciting race, wasn't it, Roger?
It was. And unfortunately, who threw the race away just on the last lap or last corner?
Oh, yeah, that's a point.
Sebastian Vettel again.
Yeah. I think this one's a bit more understandable because I think at that point he was trying to stay out of DRS range of Jenson's arrival, because if he'd not got a big enough gap, Button was probably going to pass him on the back straight coming into the chicane, and obviously just pushed too hard and got sideways. So I thought that was a more understandable mistake than the Hockenheim one 7 years later. But yeah, just one of those crazy. I mean, how many stops did he? 4, 5?
I mean, the impressive thing about it, apart from him bashing into things and so on, was 16 laps that he charged from 21st to 4th. So that's regardless of the fact he went on to win, that period was astonishing.
And then those really uncertain conditions as well. Because I was at Le Mans that weekend, and we, the then editor of Autosport.com, insisted on staying to watch the Canadian Grand Prix, and obviously in that 2-hour sort of gap, I was sort of thinking, shouldn't we? We've got a ferry to catch at some point in the middle of the night now.
Presumably Gary Watkins wasn't with you, because there's no way he'd have allowed that to happen.
Gary put up with that.
Really?
Yeah. Gary had something to write, so
well, yes.
He, there was always more that he could have done. But yeah, we didn't end up leaving the circuit until very, very late, and so you can imagine the pressure everyone in Canada must have been under, because it was so marginal for the light, whether they were actually going to restart the race, and then it was still in uncertain conditions, wasn't it? So once again, it's that sort of hinterland between dry and fully wet, where drivers like Button really have excelled.
I mean, I think that was his best season to 2011, probably better even than 2009. I mean, he comprehensively outscored Lewis Hamilton in the same team, and he was probably him and Alonso, I suppose, are the closest things to a challenger that Vettel had that season. So I always think that has been a sort of classic Button, really.
2011 was that season where Lewis sort of was clearly having some sort of personal difficulties away from the track. Yes. And he fired his father as his manager and that sort of thing. Kind of like maybe had some sort of early midlife crisis or whatever.
I'm just trying to remember, because it was 4 hours 4 minutes, which obviously wasn't the length of time they were racing.
No.
So they kept so officially it's the
longest race, but actually
slowest Grand Prix in championship history. But I don't think it's not.
But they had a long time. It was suspended for 2 hours 4 minutes and 3 seconds according to this.
Very good. There you go. Yes,
very accurate.
It's a very accurate book.
Yeah, I do.
It's got some precise
I just don't
details.
think that should count.
Yeah,
I don't.
I agree with you. It's crazy
because it makes the winning time in the average speed meaningless.
Yeah.
Well, I think most people would agree that the 2011 Canadian Grand Prix would be somewhere in a list of greatest Grand Prix, whether it's a comeback or a crazy race or a wet race. It's got to be in there somewhere. Unless any disagreement, you're quite happy with these, aren't you? I think
I'm happy with this for now.
He's got one up his sleeve here.
Okay. That's good. So, Roger, I'm going to let you talk us through this one, because I think this is one of Graham Hill's greatest drives.
Yes.
Probably not as remembered as well as, say, his Monaco wins, but the 1960 British Grand Prix, held here at Silverstone. We're at the farm at the BRDC. Thank you very much to them. A driver for BRM. It was a race that he would never win, but this is perhaps the closest he got to winning his home race.
Indeed. It's one of those races which, for me, is in folklore, because the fact that Graham Hill wasn't really highly rated particularly, but somehow he got that BRM really working well, and he had dropped back to 22nd. I think he'd had a problem at the start, dropped back to 22nd place, and Brabham, who of course was on his championship year, his second one in a row, was in the lead and sort of looked as though he was on for a comfortable win, and somehow or another Graham Hill put it together and pegged him back until he took the lead on lap 55 of 77. And of course, that was the fairy tale, but there was the nightmare to follow, because the poor fellow, admittedly under pressure from Brabham, made a mistake and spun off at Copse, and that was the end of that story. But as a comeback drive, I think it was absolutely phenomenal to come through the field in that sort of way.
Well, that BRM had suffered from overheating rear brakes, and by the end of that charge, as you'd imagine, it was suffering from that. And I think Graham said, I knew it, because he couldn't shake Jack Brabham off once he got past him. Brabham held on to him, quite tenacious competitor that Brabham was, hung on to him, and I think it was in traffic, wasn't it? With the overheating, he's like, I could wait, and then Jack will be on me, or I'm going to try and make the move. Made the move, brakes couldn't take it, and off he went. So it wasn't it was an error, but it was understandable that he made it in those circumstances. And the people that he overtook on the way to the front, John Surtees and Jim Clark in Lotus 18s, which
what a list.
I mean, that was about as quick as it got, really. And Jack Brabham reigning world champion for Cooper. So, yeah, one of his great days, but unrewarded, I suppose.
Another one where there is extant footage, I think, Pathé News. So on YouTube, there's no commentary. It's a silent thing. So you see the whole lunacy on the start line, where it's something people don't think about nowadays. There were 4 cars to a row in those days, and he was second. So the camera actually pans away with the rest of the field as you see Hill there with his arm in the air, and everyone behind him are just sort of thinking, where do we go to get out of the way? How there wasn't a massive shunt, I don't know. And you don't actually see what happens because the camera's panning away with the leaders. And then, of course, because, they didn't have universal coverage at that point, you then sort of see what they've obviously cut together footage of Hill charging through to the lead, and all of a sudden he's not there anymore, and it's Brabham again taking the flag. And you can imagine people in the cinema who would have seen that going, wait, hang on a minute, what? Unless they had someone very posh telling them what had happened off screen.
Well, and of course now, 30 seconds after the moment had happened, someone clever would have found the onboard of a couple of cars behind.
Yeah.
Whoever did the most amazing avoidance to go around the BRM, we'd know what happened. But
it don't you think it put Graham on the map for the first time in many ways?
It's probably a breakout performance, isn't it, in a Grand Prix? Yeah.
Yeah, because at that time, he'd had his sort of season of occasional races with Lotus, and then
well, occasional races, but no finishes.
Yes, occasional finishes with Lotus.
That's how it was in those days, wasn't it? And then he moved to BRM, and BRM, fair to say, as shambolic as they were at any point, they were pretty much of a shambles there, weren't they?
Bonnie had won in 59 in the front engine car, but this was now the rear engine car, which in this race was behaving rather well.
But Hill and Gurney threatened to go on strike at one point, didn't they? Unless Tony Rudd was elevated to take charge.
Yes.
Like, can we have a grown-up running thing?
Yeah, which worked, of course, because 2 years later, he still hadn't won his first Grand Prix actually until the Dutch Grand Prix.
Yes,
Graham Hill scored his first World Championship Grand Prix when he went on to win the title. So let's move on to number 6, which is a British Grand Prix, but it isn't at Silverstone.
Yes, Aintree.
1957 British Grand Prix at Aintree, which had to be in this list somewhere. I would say it's a sort of seminal moment for British motorsport in Formula One, but it also happens to be one of the great comeback drives. So, Roger, I mean, I would say if I had to pick the greatest comeback driver of all time, Mr. Sterling Moss would possibly be my number 1.
So you mentioned that it was a seminal moment. Of course, for me, it was the seminal moment whereby I became in love with the sport. The headlines at that time, Moss in a Vanwall wins at Aintree, was incredible, and it just made such a big splash at the time, and it caught my imagination. I was already into the sport to a degree through Hawthorne, Collins, and of course Fangio. But it was in 57 at this particular race that the whole thing caught light, and off I went.
Stuart, we should probably put it in context, couldn't we? Because most of the Grand Prix racing in the 50s, apart from the year and a half that Mercedes-Benz rocked up, was really an Italian-dominated sport. And the cars were national colours and all this sort of stuff. And this was finally breaking that. So it was an important historical moment. But the reason it's here, of course, is that Moss actually led in his own car, which broke. And in those days, you were allowed to to change cars. You could jump in and say, if you could bring my... But they'd planned it ahead, hadn't they?
Yeah.
Because Tony Brooks was still suffering from the
Yeah.
injuries from his Le Mans accident. And I can't remember where he was running now. Sort of top half dozen, I think.
Notes, I think.
And in he came, and in jumped Moss, and that's when the race really got started.
Well, it was by no means a given in those days that people would voluntarily hand over their car, even if they were ordered to. You know, you had the moment where Luigi Musso refused to give his car to Fangio, and Peter
At
Collins
Monza.
did. Yeah. So it was no means a given, but in this case it was, because Tony Brooks, as he described, he said he had a hole in his leg that you could fit a tennis ball in after his shunt at Le Mans. Like he'd put the Aston Martin on its roof in.
It's non-existent roof.
Yeah, it's non-existent roof. Yeah. Well, we put the car on his head in a sandbag.
Quite literally, yeah.
Trapped underneath it, only released when someone else crashed into it.
Yeah, Porsche knocked it off him, I think. Yeah.
And he kind of, in that spirit of stoicism, thought, well, it's the British Grand Prix, I'm going to do it anyway, but I'm in a bit of a bad way. So I think they put some rubber in his chair to make it a little bit less uncomfortable for him. But he was really, really in a lot of pain. And so he admitted later that he was kind of quite pleased in a way at being able to hand over. And then he got in Sterling's car, and he was quite pleased when the misfire got worse. and he was able to remove it. But then, you know, Sterling caught up with everyone. Stuart Lewis-Evans was also in the race as well. I found some Tony Brooks' own words here.
Okay.
Because you forget Jean Barra was there
He was
as
leading.
well.
On his way to what would have been his one and only World Championship Grand Prix victory.
Exactly.
For Maserati.
And so Tony wrote, by lap 69, Barra was 22 seconds ahead of Hawthorne, who had Stuart Lewis-Evans, not me, or Jackie Stewart, and Sterling breathing down his neck. Barra had a press-on regardless attitude and expected the maximum out of his car, sometimes a little more, which may or may not have had something to do with the explosion that took place inside his Maserati engine. There were barely recognisable engine bits on the track, and while Mike ought perhaps to have spotted them, he didn't, paying the price with a punctured left rear tyre. Stewart swept gloriously into the lead, only to have Sterling take it off him before he could savour the plaudits of passing the pits and grandstand at the head of the field.
Correct, because Ian Titchmarsh, who was there, his mum had a lap chart and was standing at the point between. So they came past with Stuart Lewis-Evans still ahead of Sterling Moss, so that has been corroborated. I think it was an exploding clutch rather than an engine for the Maserati. Maybe it was so
license.
maybe the car exploded and there were bits of everything.
Is that quote from Tony's book, Tony Brooks's book,
No,
Poetry in Motion?
It was in a magazine article that he wrote in the 80s, I think.
That's a great book, Poetry in Motion.
Yeah.
So it was, in a way, I suppose this is why it can't climb much higher, really, because it was a comeback drive that didn't get to fruition in a way, because he didn't have to overtake the two foremost cars that he was up against. So it's probably not even Sterling's greatest comeback drive, but it's certainly a historical moment. Right, well, into the top five, the 1965 Monaco Grand Prix. So Graham Hill makes another appearance.
That man, Graham Hill, again. Yeah, this is extraordinary because he scored, I think, 5 Monaco victories, and this would have been the last of them.
No, he did 2 in the Lotus 49, didn't he? So I think this would be number 3. I think it's number 3. Yeah,
number 3.
Yeah.
So it was. I think it may have been a hat-trick win then, was it?
Yes,
something in my mind that makes it significant.
Yeah, Bruce McLaren 62, then I think Hill 63, 4, 5.
But I think winning a Grand Prix when you actually have got out of your car,
that's a very good point.
And
not for a driver change,
and physically pushed it back onto the track is quite extraordinary.
Yeah.
And then to go on and win it against 2 pretty fearsome competitors in the shape of the 2 Ferraris. Jackie Stewart was there and the other BRM as well.
Yeah, I think
that's pretty remarkable.
Overtaking your own teammate when that teammate is Jackie Stewart, even if it was his first year, that's still pretty impressive.
I think Jackie had a spin, didn't he?
Yeah.
And sort of thought, this isn't my day. You crack on. Was it Bob Bondurant that he found in the middle of the chicane?
Bob Anderson,
who was literally crawling, and he realised, I think, at sort of the last minute, I'm going to arrive at just the moment he's there.
Yeah.
So it was safer to go down the escape road than it was to have an enormous accident at the chicane, which was fast in those days. Of course, Lorenzo Bandini would die there a couple of years later, so it wasn't the tight chicane that we know today. But yeah, to come through and I think overtake Lorenzo Bandini, not the easiest guy to overtake, as he'd found the year before in Mexico, or John Surtees, who came back at him, I think, didn't he, Surtees?
Yes.
So he had some work to do in that race. So I think it's probably Graham Hill's greatest drive, I think, 65 Monaco. So two entries.
And definitely a comeback drive. I mean, coming back from exiting your car is remarkable.
Yes, that's a good point.
Which you could do in those days, with
no belts.
Although the other thing that Tony Brooks said about getting in and getting out was in the van walk, because it was so aerodynamically designed. You had to stand on the back wheel to get in, so and pull the other guy out. So it was quite a palaver to extract him from the car and for Sterling to get in.
Yeah, not what you want when you're an injured man already, is it? Yeah, no, fair enough. Right, so we're into 1987 British Grand Prix. I'm going to be honest, I never bore of watching Mansell do the dummy on PK and sticking it down the inside to win that race, even though his fuel readout was all wrong and whatever. So what's interesting about this one, Roger, is in the early part of the race when Mansell is chasing PK, he doesn't really look like he's got anything for him, does it? And he comes in for his, I think it's weight balance or something.
That's it.
And then it's almost like he's the real Silverstone spec Nigel Mansell gets switched on, and then it's lap record after lap record after lap record, wasn't it?
28 seconds he had to catch up in 30 laps, and he did it before the end. And this was another one. I was there. And what's more...
Well, where were you?
I was at Stowe.
Oh,
excellent.
I was in a Stowe grandstand, and seeing that dummy, it's etched in my mind. I shall never forget it. And of course, there was afterwards when he did his lap of honour, Mansell, ever the showman, was on a motorbike, rather extraordinarily, doing a lap of honour, and he stopped the motorbike and got off and kissed the ground, kissed the tarmac where he did the overtake.
Who does he think he was? The
Pope? To the crowd, yeah. That for me, in terms of a comeback drive, you couldn't believe how he was pulling him in. Could he get there by the end of the race? You know, for the crowd, it was an absolute fantastic Grand Prix.
And then the actual moment, I mean, it wasn't that ridiculous. It was like he was in a completely different car, wasn't it?
Yeah.
It was just
the timing is absolutely
beautiful,
bang on.
It was a classic piece of Mansell theatre.
Yes,
wasn't it?
yeah, that's a good way of putting it. Yeah,
and when he passed Berger at the Peralta in Mexico, it was the same thing. It was eyeballs out on stalk stuff that he made look easy, and yet it's ridiculously hard.
Yes.
I think we should say that the reason that PK didn't do a tyre stop was there was a belief for that race that it wouldn't give you enough of an advantage. We're used to fresh tyres giving you big advantage in Grand Prix these days, aren't we? But that wasn't believed to have been the case for that one. And obviously, so Mansell was forced in and then obviously put on his great drive. I suppose PK fans would argue, Nelson was keeping an eye on the fuel readout, whereas Mansell had gone, well, to hell with that, it's the British Grand Prix, I'm gone, sort of thing. And he, on this occasion, the luck stayed with him. But I think it's got to be in there. I guess the reason it can't go higher, the reason that the next race, which is another Nigel Mansell race, is higher on this list, is the Williams Hondas at that point were so much quicker than everything else. They lapped the field. I think Alain Prost beats them off the line, actually, at Silverstone, and less than they just walk past him like he's... Whereas in the 1989 Hungarian Grand Prix, which is number 3 on our list, I would say that Mansell has got... Well, first of all, it's a harder track to overtake on.
Yes.
The Hungaroring, and that's before they did the extension at the end of the
turn one.
Start-finish track. And the Ferrari was not the most powerful car in the field. In fact, did watch the replay of this race, watched it a few times. Even in the tow, the McLaren Honda walks away from the Ferrari in a straight line. So he's got some work to do, and he's got 12. He starts 12th.
Yeah.
And he does a lot of the work on the first lap. But then there's that period, Roger, in the race where he doesn't do too much. Buys his time, leaders go off, and then it's sort of that mid-race charge onto the back of the leading group, isn't it?
Yes. If I can set the scene for me again, the date of this race was 13th of August 1989, and that was school holidays time. And I remember finding a television in a campsite to watch this race, And I was, absolutely overwhelmed by this drive. I thought it was one of the greatest things I'd ever seen.
I felt the same. I remember watching it live with my dad. Yeah.
And the tiny little hesitation that Senna made, that Mansell picked up on, that allowed him to get by, was sensational. He really could, at his height, Mansell, just not in terms of the excitement he could generate when you watched him, but he had enormous ability that sometimes, because of other things about the man, you tend to sort of underestimate.
He made races exciting, didn't he?
Yeah.
He just brought something to... When other people came up behind Senna, you kind of thought, well, with Mansell, you thought something will happen.
Yeah,
will happen.
Was never cowed by him. The thing that separates this race from others for me is that he was actually, as you said, very clever with it.
Yes.
So, the car was nowhere on the qualifying tyres, so instead of persisting with the qualifying tyres, he just went round with his race tyres and focused on race setup, watched himself go down the leaderboard as other people went faster, and then just built the race almost from ground zero, didn't he?
Yeah, very Prost-like, very analytical, very thoughtful.
I believe he insisted on a quite major front wing change as well, didn't he, ahead of the race, to give it a bit more front end bite, because I think they've been struggling with understeer, and obviously it was the quickest thing on the track in over a lap, obviously not in a straight line.
Against Barnard's advice, I think.
Yeah.
I don't think the team were very keen to do it, but he pushed it through. And of course, the overtaking manoeuvre, as we sort of mentioned there, Stephanie Hanson's Onyx going even slower than Onyx would normally go. I think he had some sort of
it was going very, very slowly.
So Senna arrived at just the wrong moment, didn't he? Come down the downhill right-hander and had to lift, and Mansell was in the right place to go past, and then he disappeared. So, Nigel Mansell's greatest drive, I would argue. I know that over the years he's chosen different races, isn't he? I think he's chosen 86 Brands, 87 Silverstone, and 89 Hungary. I'm going to go with the Hungary win.
And he managed to not cut himself on the trophy for this race.
No. We should. I mean, that's actually another thing that feeds into this is that, remember, I'm going to skate over that one. Is that 1988-89 we were used to red and white McLaren Hondas winning all the time. 15 out of 16 the year before, and they did steamroller everyone really in '89. I know Maritza won the first race in Rio, much to everyone, including his surprise. But so it was a bit of an out of the blue one as well. Right, we're getting to the top two, and I feel like this could be the moment where Stuart has something to say about it.
I think it is.
Dennis is going to pop out the cupboard to disagree with you.
Number two. Yeah, but he's biased. He's gotten invested in one of the races. So number two, Roger. Talk us through. Well, it's a record. It's the furthest back a driver has ever started and won a Grand Prix in 22nd, which at the moment they can't break. But when Cadillac join, it could be matched again, couldn't it?
Sergio Perez could drive from the back of the grid to the front.
He could.
Or it could be Valtteri Bottas, because Perez is going to be faster than Valtteri, isn't he? I'm saying this to appease the people who will be complaining when they listen to this.
I would suggest that the only way this is going to work is if Max Verstappen or one of the McLarens has a problem that puts them on the back of the grid and they start 22nd. I think the idea of Bottas or Perez winning from 22nd in a Cadillac next year.
I was just ensuring I'm let back into the country.
Is Cadillac going to be at the back of the grid?
Let's not presume.
Well, you never know.
I mean, it would be great if they weren't, but you'd have to assume that you've got to, it's going to take them a bit of time. But they've employed lots of good people, and they're taking it seriously. So new regs. So let's hope that they can get into at least the battle in the midfield. But it's the 1983 US Grand Prix West, Long Beach. John Watson and Niki Lauda start 22nd and 23rd because they can generate absolutely no temperature into their Michelin tyres. But in the race, that doesn't matter, and through they come. Yes, and of course the key overtake for Watson was his teammate Lauda. Because there was a period of time where he was following Lauda, but he made it, and I actually met John Watson, and he came and had some food with me at a restaurant, and we talked about this race quite a lot. And he says, and this is interesting in relation to what you're going to say, possibly, is that it was all about tyres.
Well, there we go. his self-deprecatingness is acting as the hors d'oeuvre for Ron Dennis going.
So do you want to say what you were going to say about it?
There we go. So here we have seminal text, McLaren, the Grand Prix, Can-Am and Indy Cars by Doug Nye, which basically is the Bible for McLaren up until 1987. So Doug says in his book, it was a remarkable performance, but the realistic Ron Dennis dismisses suggestions of the team weaving some mysterious technical magic for race day. Conditions changed. It's as simple as that. Once they changed our tyres, began to generate grip. And when you generate grip, the tyres start to heat up. And the hotter they become, the more grip you get. So within certain limits, it just gets better and better.
Just like to apologise to Ron Dennis, one of the greatest F1 team bosses of all time, for that appalling impression.
Sorry, that's not like Darren Hicks and Ron Dennis.
But I think that, this is a more general point about covering Formula One and motorsport now compared to back in the days, that I think there was a little more space for magic, in the sense that these things have always been important, but people didn't talk about them or write about them. You know, one of the reasons that Colin Chapman designed the Lotus 72 as he did was so that he could use, with the inboard brakes, was to use softer compound tyres. But that's not very sexy and romantic, is it? You want to hear daring do of the drivers behind the wheel. So it's very difficult, I think, when talking and reporting about some of these things, that sometimes the thing that decides a victory or not is quite a boring thing about tyres or a front wing end plate or something. But you don't want to hear about that. You want to hear about a driver, coming through. Having said all that, you've still got to overtake 21 cars.
I mean, John's surely being overly modest by saying.
I think he was. I mean, can I remember correctly? Did he say tyres and the driver, or didn't he? I can't remember.
Surely he did.
Certainly tyres.
Come on, John, you can take the credit for that one. I mean, I think he was a better overtaker than Lauda. I mean, there was the race the year before. I want to say, where was it? It was another one of the US races where Lauda had been behind Pironi and somebody else for lap after lap, and Watty arrived and overtook all three of them in the space of a lap. Just get there and make the move. Don't get sucked into driving at their pace. Carry that momentum in, catch them by surprise and clear off. And he won. I think he won three of his five wins starting outside the top 10.
Yes.
So you've got to be pretty good at overtaking. I mean, I know that things were different then with the tyres and the turbos, and the DFV runners were always better in the race relative to where they were in qualifying. But overtaking cars, even then, wasn't the work of a moment, was it?
No. And you're right when you say people aren't massively interested in tyres, because it's not sexy, is it? It's even today when people are interested in the technology, they still want the expert in the pit lane to point at a bit of the car and say that makes it faster or whatever, this does that, and the fact of a tyre pushing a little bit more of its outer surface into the pores of the road or whatever, just it's something people can't see or understand properly, and so they don't really care. Although there isn't that great story, was it Mark Thatcher who was working as a pit lane reporter?
I'm glad you popped him in.
I think it was.
Said no one ever.
But bustled up to Alan Jones and asked him about the importance of tyres, and Jonesy said, I won't do a terrible Australian accent.
Oh my goodness, no, please.
But said, the tyres were very important to the outcome of the race. And so Thatcher leans in with the microphone thinking, I've got gold dust here. And Jones goes, yeah, they stopped the car from hitting the ground.
Yeah, you can imagine Alan Jones quite enjoying delivering that as well, can't you? So, does that mean that as you've picked this out, that you would like to have this race as number one instead of what we've actually chosen?
No.
You backtracked, or you just wanted to raid the Ron Dennis?
He just wanted to do the Ron Dennis.
I thought I would cite Ron Dennis as someone who was, saying, actually, no, it was all about tyres, just tyres.
I mean, that's very Ron, isn't it? But he's correct.
Yeah,
he is correct,
as he normally was, to be honest.
Correct. And from a driver, probably dismissing a driver that he was about to dismiss anyway in another year.
Yes, that's true.
Right, well, let's talk about number one then. 1957 German Grand Prix, one Manuel Fangio at the Nürburgring. greatest racetrack in the history of world. Well, I'd say it's just the greatest racetrack actually. So, Roger, this didn't take us very long actually to pick this one, did it?
No, I think it's rightfully there as well because, as you say, at the Nürburgring, Nordschleife.
Schleifer.
You say potato.
And Fangio's final victory, regarded, I think, generally speaking, as the greatest victory of his time, and that's Fangio. Now we can all sort of relate to the fact that Fangio was truly a great. There's no question in anyone's mind.
Well, I don't think anyone would debate that. No.
So this, if it's his greatest victory, must be, somewhere in this book must be very special, and I think it therefore, deservedly comes into the comebacks chapter because it was extraordinary that he made up 30 seconds or more.
It's nearly a minute, I think. They sort of 48.
Well, they practiced, didn't they, during pit stops? During practice, they practiced the pit stops. It was always the plan to have a half tanks.
Yeah.
The alternative strategy.
Alternate
strategy. Sorry, is actually what people say, don't they?
Yeah.
So I like even less.
You could hear the contempt.
Yes, yeah. So I think they got it down to about 40-45 seconds during practice, and then come the race.
The wheel nut disappears under the car, doesn't it?
Maserati style. It took about twice as long.
I've got it here now. It says it turned his 30-second lead into a 48-second deficit.
I mean, that's a long stop, even by the standards of the day.
They put the new wheel on, and then hang on a minute, there's something missing here, guys.
Yeah. But of course, what played into their hands, or his hands, was how long the lap was, and they didn't have these live timing beamed direct back to the pit stops in those days. So I believe Fangio and his sort of engineer mechanic had a bit of an agreement, and it was like just go out. The first couple of laps out of the pits were nothing special, and it looked like, the Ferraris of Peter Collins and Mike Hawthorne have got this in the bag. And then there was a kind of a nod from the pit wall because Ferrari put out an easy, back off type message. At which point Fangio unleashes an assault that smashes the lap record to pieces. And of course you've got a whole lap where he's broken the lap record. Then they get the timer. So there's a good couple of laps that Ferrari, and a lap there was 14 miles. You've taken a lot of time out of the Ferraris, and of course he was driving at a pace that they couldn't match anyway. But he got that much closer to make it possible, because I think Michael.
I think that's fair. Yeah. But the other thing, we talked about it in one of the other podcasts, is Fangio was in the zone. I mean, in that special zone. I believe I was inspired that day. I never drove quite like that before, and I never drove quite like that ever again.
I mean, that's the clinching quote. I was going to. Yeah. That's if the driver says that. And it's the Nordschleife. Those two things combined launch it high up any of these lists, I would say.
In his Race of My Life entry in Autosport a few years ago, which he did while he was still alive, I think it was late 80s, he spoke to one of our journalists, and he said that he was taking risks that he would never ordinarily have done, and carrying higher gears, carrying higher speeds, and then all of a sudden the Ferraris came into view, and he knew he had them. And even then, he kind of thought, I've never done this before. I'll never do it again. And a year later, he basically abruptly retired. He kind of spent.
French Grand Prix. That was like, no, that was it, done. But very late in his career for pulling off his great drive. But I think to survive in that era, you probably needed to leave a bit more of a margin, or the top guys did anyway. I think the ones that didn't see out their careers. But for Fangio to dig that deep around that racetrack, and probably in his favourite race car, I would imagine, the 250F, not the fastest, most sophisticated car that he'd have driven, but in terms of handling. Everyone always
predictable car.
It was a good car throwing around. I mean, the van walls that we've been talking about. Obviously, we've got two 1957 races in here. They were all at sea with their suspension for that particular race, and so they weren't in it at all. I think Moss maybe dragged it to fifth. You got it there, Roger?
Yeah, fifth. The van wall. Yeah.
Now they got it sorted for the following year because Tony Brooks sorted out the same two Ferrari drivers the following year. Unfortunately, of course, it was also the race that Peter Collins was killed. But Brooks always picked that as his greatest drive, and actually he's got some quite, a few similarities in terms of charging after the Ferraris and things. He always thought, well, it was Fangio's greatest drive, and I did my version of it the following year. Well, fair enough. But I think, it's an outstanding race.
Underestimated driver, Tony Brooks.
Tony Brooks,
very much so.
Absolutely, yeah. Well, one of the top half dozen Grand Prix drivers not to be world champion.
Definitely.
I mean, Mostac's number one, obviously, but then after that, you've got a few that I think Brooks would be up there with Gurney and Peterson and Villeneuve and people like that.
Another driver who was very intelligent in the way they went about their business. Probably too intelligent, wasn't he? Like he in effect, gave up the world championship because
you're going to do a dentist. You're going to do a dentist joke in a minute, aren't you?
No.
I checked up before.
That's it.
Before we drill down into the information.
I'll check up first. Yeah, drill down. Oh, good.
I mean, you should also say that when he was at Vanwall, it was very much the number two.
Yeah.
So if he had the better engine or the better car, Sterling would be jumping in and out of all the different Vanwalls, and if he liked Brooks's engine in his chassis, that's what he got. So Brooks would always be running with whatever Moss had left him. So if you then bear in mind what he was still able to go and do and win, and he won 3 races in '58, he was more races than Mike Hawthorne won for Ferrari. So very much an underrated great. But
he was anything but the filling.
Right. None of that, thank you. Right, so that was comebacks. So I think we're all agreed 1957 German Grand Prix is number one. There we go. So let me know what you think. Kevin.turn@autosport.com. Did we miss any comebacks? There might be some appear later in the series or in other episodes or in other chapters of the book if you haven't taken a look at it yet. So look out for those. But I think we've got the major ones. So thank you very much to Stuart Codling. Thank you very much to Roger Smith, and thank you very much for listening. We'll be back soon with another Autosport podcast.